And now let's take you back to the White House, the Oval Office there. It appears questions are now being taken from reporters, but then we also see President Erdogan of Turkey speaking at the moment. That is a question that was directed to him, but we are waiting to hear from President Trump himself as he takes questions from reporters. So let's listen in.
What did he say?
The gentleman was asking, Mr. President, you have referred to President Trump's peace efforts, and you have also contact with many leaders in the region. And what do you think that you can do about this? And Mr. President has said that, yes, I believe in the peace efforts that President Trump is leading, and together we will be able to overcome the challenges in the region.
I think it's true. He's got tremendous influence in the region. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, when are you planning to lift CAATSA sanctions against Turkey?
Against sanctions against Turkey?
CAATSA.
Could be very soon.
Mr.
If we have a good meeting, almost immediately.
President Erdogan is removing tariffs on U.S. goods, and what impact it would be in U.S. production?
Where are you from?
Turkey.
I see. We have a lot of people from Turkey here. That's
We are
good. Because I like the questions very much, actually. They're very nice questions. We'll see about tariffs. We're going to be talking about tariffs.
We already removed them.
Well, we're going to be talking about that.
Sanctions on Russia, even if not all NATO countries stop purchasing Russian oil?
We're going to be seeing about that. The NATO countries were disappointing in that regard, but they've been very amazing in other ways. They did, as you know, they went from 2% to 5% GDP, and that's a big step, and it's paid. I mean, they have the money there, and we're selling a tremendous amount of military equipment to NATO. We're selling. We're not giving like Biden did. We're selling it to NATO, and it's a lot. They're buying a lot, and I assume they're giving it to Ukraine. They could buy it for other reasons too, but I assume they're giving most of it to Ukraine. But they're buying highly sophisticated weaponry, and they're paying for it full price, and that's how we're involved. Biden gave $350 billion. Look, this war would have never started if I were president. If I were president, this war would never be happened. Would have never happened. Yeah.
Mr. President, I would like to ask about Gaza. Are you on the same page, Mr. Erdogan, for Palestine, Israel?
Well, I don't know his stance. I can't tell you about that. I just say that we want to get Gaza over with. I had a great meeting with the leaders of that area, of that region, generally speaking, the Middle East. We had a great meeting the other day at UNGA, as you know, and I think we're close to getting some kind of a deal done. Yeah, we want to get the hostages back. I have to get the hostages back. We're the ones that got the hostages, all of them that we have now. But it looks like there are 20 living hostages and probably 38 or so dead hostages. Pretty sad. And the parents of those dead souls, those dead, mostly men, boys, in many cases like literally boys, they want those bodies back so badly, as much as though they were alive. And so we had a very good meeting with the representatives of the most powerful countries in the Middle East, and I think we're going to be close to a deal.
We've noticed that in the Ukrainian war and during the Israeli-Iran war, the airspace of the NATO countries is very fragile, and it needs to be stronger. And in that sense, Turkey being the second largest army in NATO, it needs to support its air force and air defense. How do you look at this issue in general as a NATO?
Well, we support them. I mean, we're in NATO, and you know, they're paying now 5% of GDP. Nobody thought that was possible, and they agreed to that 6 months ago when I was there. And the relationship is very good. The NATO countries are, I mean, with us, is the strongest it's ever been. We used to complain that they're paying 2%, but they're not paying. The United States was paying almost everything. And now they're paying 5%, and they paid. And that's trillions of dollars. You know, we're talking about trillions of dollars. And they're spending that, giving that money to us, and we are giving them great defensive, you know, the Patriots and all of the different javelins, all the different missile systems and everything else that they want. But it's it's trillions of dollars. So we appreciate that they did that. So they went from 2% to 5% of GDP, and that was something that nobody even would bring up. Biden should have brought it up a long time ago, because under Biden we paid $350 billion, and all it did is make things worse. So we'll see how.
F-35s to Turkey, fighter jets, F-35s.
Yeah, we're talking about the fighter jets for Turkey. Yes, we are.
Are we going to see any steps going to be taken today about the issue, about the things that are going on in the Gaza, Palestine? Are we going to?
It could be today. Yeah, it could be today. We have a very strong dialogue going on with Saudi Arabia. With I would say you have 4 or 5 real leaders that are being good. As you know, I met with Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE. We met with Jordan. The King of Jordan was there. We had a really great meeting. I think a lot was determined at that meeting, and I have to meet with Israel, and I have to do that also. They know what I want, and I think we can get that one done. I hope we can get it done. A lot of people are dying, but we want the hostages back. We don't want them back 1 this week, 1 and 2 months from now, 3 later, and like the way it's been going. We got them all back. We got a lot of them back. We got the American Alexander. We got the American hostages back, but we have now 20 plus 38 bodies, dead bodies, and we want them all back, and we want them back at one time.
President Erdogan will help to release the hostages?
Do I think what?
Do you think President Erdogan will help to release the hostages?
I don't know if he'll help in that. I don't really think we have. I don't think it'll be necessary in this case. I think we're going to be in a pretty good position. There are a lot of people that want that done. I met with great leaders. Look, you saw the people that were there, and great leaders. Egypt was also represented. We met with the leaders of that part of the world, and they want to see if they can get something done. And I'm going to have to tell Israel, let's go. We want to get the hostages back. Everybody wants to see that war over with, by the way. Everybody. So we're going to see what happens.
Mr.
President.
How do you see a joint initiative with President Erdogan to bring the President of Russia, Putin, and President Zelensky to the negotiating table?
Well, I can tell you that President Erdogan is very respected by both of them. Everybody respects Erdogan. They really respect Erdogan. I do. And I think he could have a big influence if he wants to. Right now, he's very neutral. He likes being neutral. So do I like being neutral. But he's somebody that, if he got involved, the best thing he could do is not buy oil and gas from Russia. If he did that, that would be probably the best thing. He knows Putin like I know Putin. I thought Putin, I settled, as you know, 7 wars, and it's probably more than that if you really want to know the real facts, but 7 wars, and I thought this would be among the easier ones to settle. But I'm very disappointed in Putin. And he's been fighting hard, he's been fighting long, and they lost millions, they lost like 1 million soldiers. And with all of the heavy bombardment over the last 2 weeks, they've gained almost no land. Think of that. They've gained almost no land. And I'm not going to ever call anybody a paper tiger, but Russia spent millions and millions of dollars in bombs, missiles, ammunition, and lives, their lives. And they've gained virtually no land. I think it's time to stop. I really do.
Mr.
A few months ago, you met with Aliyev and Pashinyan. Can you follow up?
So where?
You met with Aliyev and Pashinyan, Azerbaijan President Aliyev and Pashinyan. Can you follow up on what you want to say about current
No,
process?
I can't. I can't.
I
I like this guy. I like him. He's from CNN. Fake news, the worst fake news. but I like him. So it's CNN Turkey. I'll get Brian. Go.
Syria has been a major issue between the two countries for the past decade. And you said the future of Syria is in Erdogan's hands back in, I think, December and January. And the countries are in the process of integrating little fractures into the main government. When do you want to see that happen?
Well, I think President Erdogan is the one responsible for Syria, for the successful fight in ridding Syria of its past leader. And I think this man is responsible. He doesn't take the responsibility, but it's actually a great achievement. They've been trying to do it for 2,000 years. I said, he does it. He did it. I mean, they're your surrogates. I think you should take the credit for it. I told him, take the credit. For 2,000 years, you've been trying to take over Syria. He took over Syria, and he doesn't want to take the credit. You know, all of those people are his surrogates. But the leader of Syria, the new leader, as you know, I took sanctions off in order to let them breathe, because the sanctions were very strong. But I think we should have a major announcement today. He was responsible for that victory. It was a victory for Turkey, because they've been fighting, as you know, for like 1,000 years. And it never went, you know, it was back and forth, but he's responsible for that. So he would have a lot to say with respect to Syria. But at his request, I took, and the request also of the King of Saudi Arabia, it's very interesting, and Qatar, they said if you could take the sanctions. We had very strong sanctions. They couldn't have lived with those sanctions, and I took them off to give them a chance to breathe. But the president was one of the people that was responsible for that. He asked me to do it. I did it.
Mr. President, furloughs are very typical when the government shuts down. Why is the administration directing federal layoffs of federal workers this time around?
Well, this is all caused by the Democrats. They asked us to do something that's totally unreasonable. They never change. They want to give money away to illegally, people that entered our country illegally. They want to give them massive federal money. And we don't want to do that because it means everyone's going to just keep pouring back. Right now we have absolutely perfect borders like you haven't seen in many years. Even better than I had great borders during my 4 years, but these borders are stone cold closed. You can only come into our country legally now. But the Democrats want to give it all away. They want to open up the borders. Take a look at that. Big thing. They want to open borders again. After what we're going through now, getting rid of prisoners, getting rid of all of these people dropped out from mental institutions, drug dealers, drug addicts, everything. They're putting everybody into our country. It's all ended now. But this is what Schumer wants. This is what the Democrats want. They want to have, and they want to take our money. We're doing well because of tariffs. We're doing unbelievable. We're making more money than we ever have made. And by the way, we're going to take some of that tariff money that we made, just to get off the subject for a second. We're going to take some of that tariff money that we made. We're going to give it to our farmers, who are, for a little while, going to be hurt until it kicks in. The tariffs kick into their benefit. So we're going to make sure that our farmers are in great shape because we're taking in a lot of money. We're finding, the other day, it was very interesting, they found $31 billion. They said, sir, we found 31. I said, you mean positively, right? They said, yeah, 31 million more than we knew. And they said, we don't know where it came from. I said, check the tariff shelf. They came back the following morning. They said, you're right, sir, it came from the tariffs. We've never seen anything like this. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking some money from all of the tariff money that we've taken, and we're going to distribute it to our farmers until the tariffs kick into their benefit, which ultimately the farmers are going to be making a fortune. But it's a process of, it has to kick in. All right, maybe one more.
Mr. President, there was another shooting at an ICE facility in Texas yesterday.
Terrible.
Detainees were killed. The FBI director posted on social media bullets that were engraved with the message anti-ICE.
Right.
He just posted another thing on social media saying they recovered a handwritten note from the subject that read, hopefully this will give ICE agents real terror to think, is there a sniper with AP rounds on that roof? Who do you hold responsible for the uptick in left-wing violence in the country?
Radical left rhetoric. The radical left is causing the problem. They're out of control. They're saying things, and they're really dumb people. I mean, I look at Crockett. I look at some of these people. They're very low IQ people, actually. But the radical left is causing this problem, not the right, the radical left. And it's going to get worse, and ultimately it's going to go back on them. I mean, bad things happen when they play these games. And I'll give you a little clue. The right is a lot tougher than the left. But the right's not doing this. They're not doing it. And they better not get them energized, because it won't be good for the left. And I don't want to see that happen either. I'm the president of all the people. But the radical left is causing this. Radical left Democrats are causing this problem. And it gets worse. It gets worse. And it'll be a point where other people won't take it anymore, and that will not be good for the radical left. And we don't want that. Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, it seems like an indictment of James Comey is imminent. Would this be the first step in accountability for pushing the hoax of Russia, along with Barack Obama involved as well?
Well, I can't tell you what's going to happen because I don't know. You have very professional people headed up by the Attorney General, and Todd Blanche, and Lindsay Halligan, who's very smart, good lawyer, very good lawyer. They're going to make a determination. I'm not making that determination. I think I'd be allowed to get involved if I want, but I don't really choose to do so. I can only say that Comey's a bad person. He's a sick person. I think he's a sick guy, actually. He did terrible things at the FBI. And but I don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen. Thank you very much, everybody.
And you were listening to President Trump there at the White House, the Oval Office, and seated next to him is President Erdogan of Turkey. Both leaders meeting today to talk about a multitude of issues. But I want to focus on what we heard from President Trump, because he touched on Syria and lifting the sanctions against that nation. He also talked about the ongoing war in Gaza. And he mentioned the shooting yesterday at the ICE facility in Dallas, Texas, basically blaming the radical left. Those were his words, the radical left, for that shooting. But now I want to get to the White House and CBS News White House reporter Willie James Inman. Willie, your takeaways from what the president had to say during that Oval Office meeting today.
Hey there, Mugo. Well, no shortage of topics there that the president discussed, and you mentioned it perfectly. He did talk about the situation in Gaza. He essentially said that he believes that they are close to a deal, but remember, essentially things have stalled there in terms of those negotiations with Hamas as Israel continues to ramp up its efforts to get rid of that group. We, of course, know that the president focused heavily on the war in Ukraine with these remarks with the President Erdogan there sitting next to him. He said that Putin ought to stop, and he then went on to say that they believe he's very disappointed in President Putin as Russia continues to assault Ukraine. Remember, the president met with the Russian president in Alaska to try to bring about a solution to this conflict. And the leader of Russia and the leader of Ukraine have not sat down just yet. This is something that the White House has wanted that bilateral meeting and then a trilateral meeting, perhaps with all three leaders, including President Trump, if there were a solution to be brought to the war in Ukraine. And we saw earlier this week, the president is siding with Ukraine, essentially shifting his policy stance, saying that Ukraine could potentially win back much of the territory that it has lost with continued support with the Europeans. We, of course, know that the U.S., under the leadership of President Trump, has sought to sell weapons to NATO nations, to European nations, who then, of course, give some of those weapons that Ukraine needs to them in their battle and pushback against Russian forces. And the president also was asked about the threat of a potential government shutdown, blaming Democrats, saying that they want illegal immigration. I'll note that the White House is signaling that they will potentially move to lay off perhaps thousands of government employees in response to a government shutdown, which could happen in the coming days. Government funding runs out on September 30th. We, of course, know there are some essential government functions that the U.S. government will continue to run. Air traffic controllers is one of the jobs that I think about when it comes to those essential employees, immigration services, things such as that. But the president saying there that he believes that this plan that the Democrats put forward to claw back some of the cuts for Medicaid and the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill. He calls it the radical left, essentially, those proposals coming from Democrats there. So a lot of news coming out of that, those remarks with the president as he continues to sit down with President Erdogan of Turkey.
Yeah, and Willie, I also wanted to get your take on what the president had to say about the shooting yesterday at the Dallas ICE facility. He was very, very clear that he thinks the radical left, those were his words, are responsible for shootings, the shootings we've seen as of late. And then he also mentioned how they shouldn't do that because the right might respond and the radical left wouldn't like it. And that's interesting as we talk about the need to dial back on that kind of rhetoric and how we need leaders who are saying, hey, we should just not do this at all, whether it's coming from the left or the right. I want to get your take on that. Is it just how important is it to have a leader who is standing up and saying this is wrong, whether it's coming from the left or the right or the middle, whoever?
Yeah, that's certainly right. But we, of course, know how President Trump tends to respond to these types of situations. The president essentially being himself there. We know that he has blasted what he calls the so-called radical left for not only getting in the way of his political agenda, but also with some of the violence that we have seen play out across the nation as well. So it's perhaps no surprise that the president said what he said there in the Oval Office in response to a question about the shooting that took place yesterday. Oftentimes, we see more tempered responses coming from governors and local leaders. I'll note the response coming from the governor of Utah following the Charlie Kirk shooting was a very tempered response, calling for calm. We have seen that come from political leaders in Congress as well, on both sides of the aisle. But oftentimes the president, in his words, will cast blame on some individuals, or in this case, a ideology, so-called blaming the radical left for some of these incidents that we've seen play out.
All right, Willie James Inman at the White House for us, walking us through a multitude of topics there after that meeting with President Trump and the president of Turkey, Erdogan. Thank you so much. As always, we appreciate your time.
This is a CBS News special report. I'm John Dickerson. President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu are holding a press conference. The president is speaking. Let's listen in.
Things that have been going on for hundreds of years and thousands of years. We're going to, at least we're at a minimum very, very close, and I think we're beyond very close. And I want to thank Bibi for really getting in there and doing a job. We've worked well together, as we have with many other countries, both of us, with many other countries, which is the only way this whole situation gets solved. And I'm not just talking about Gaza. Gaza is one thing, but we're talking about much beyond Gaza. The whole deal, everything getting solved. It's called peace in the Middle East. So today is a historic day for peace, and Prime Minister Netanyahu and I have just concluded an important meeting on many vital issues, including Iran, trade, the expansion of the Abraham Accords, and most importantly, we discussed how to end the war in Gaza, but it's just a part of the bigger picture, which is peace in the Middle East, and let's call it eternal peace in the Middle East. So this is far more than anybody expected, but the level of support that I've had from the nations in the Middle East and surrounding Israel and neighbors of Israel has been incredible, incredible. Every single one of them. This afternoon, after extensive consultation with our friends and partners throughout the region, I'm formally releasing our principles for peace, which people have really liked, I must say. And these are done, not just routinely done, these are done with total consideration and working with the nations that we're talking about. All of these nations have made contributions to those suggestions. I want to thank the leaders of many Arab and Muslim nations for their tremendous support in developing the proposal, along with many of our allies in Europe. Europe has been very much involved, and as I was called by many of the European leaders, most of them saying, is this true? Are you really doing peace in the Middle East? This is the most incredible thing we've heard. Some think it's the biggest thing they've ever heard. They called just to find out, was it just a rumor or is it actually done? And then they said, have you spoken to the Arab leaders? Have you spoken to all of the other leaders that we have to get? A lot of people involved in this one. I also want to thank Prime Minister Netanyahu for agreeing to the plan and for trusting that if we work together, we can bring an end to the death and destruction that we've seen for so many years, decades, even centuries, and begin a new chapter of security, peace, and prosperity for the entire region. And I want to just say that my meetings and dialogue that we had with so many countries, Saudi Arabia as an example, the king is a phenomenal person. The Emir of Qatar, he's incredible people. UAE, and that's MBZ and ABZ. We're totally involved. These are the people that we've been dealing with and who've been actually very much involved in this negotiation, giving us ideas, things they can live with, things they can't live with. Pretty complex. I mean, after 2,000, 3,000 years, whatever it is, I guess it's got to be a little complex, or it would have been done a long time ago. The King of Jordan was with us, as you know, in the United Nations. The President of Turkey, President Erdogan, is a friend of mine, a strong man, but a good man. President of Indonesia, somebody who's an amazing leader. Prabowo, he is an amazing leader and respected by everybody. He was in the room with us. We were together with most of these people that I'm mentioning. Others were by phone or the next day. The Prime Minister and the Field Marshal of Pakistan, they were with us right from the beginning. Incredible. In fact, they just put out a statement that they fully believe in this pact. It just came out just as I was walking on. They said, sir, you have a big notice from the Prime Minister of Pakistan and from the Field Marshal that they back this 100%. President El-Sisi of Egypt, who's terrific. And these are people I've gotten to know over the years. I mean, I would say it started around 2015 and then went into 2016 when the presidency officially began. But I've known him actually for a long time, and there are many cases really great men. I can't say in all cases, but I will tell you in many cases they're great men, and some great women too. They tend to be mostly men, however, I will say that. But if accepted by Hamas, this proposal calls for the release of all remaining hostages immediately, but in no case more than 72 hours. So the hostages are coming back, and I hate even saying this from the standpoint, doesn't sound right, but it is so important to the parents. The bodies of the young men, I believe in almost all cases, the young men are coming back immediately. I met with parents. The parents felt as strongly about getting the body of their dead boy back as they did as though the boy were alive and well. It's so important to them. And it means the immediate end to the war itself, not just Gaza. It's the war itself. Under the plan, Arab and Muslim countries have committed, and in writing in many cases, but I actually would take their word for it. The people I mentioned, I'd take their word for it, to demilitarize Gaza, and that's quickly. Decommission the military capabilities of Hamas and all other terror organizations. Do that immediately. And we're relying on the countries that I named and others to deal with Hamas. And I'm hearing that Hamas wants to get this done too, and that's a good thing. And destroy all terror infrastructure, including the tunnels, weapons of production facilities. They have a lot of production facilities that we're destroying. They'll also help train local police forces in the areas that we're discussing right now, in particular in and around Gaza, working with the new transitional authority in Gaza. All parties will agree on a timeline for Israeli forces to withdraw in phases. They'll be withdrawing in phases. No more shooting, hopefully, as progress is made toward achieving these goals. Arab and Muslim nations need to be allowed the chance to fulfill these commitments of dealing with Hamas. They have to deal with them because they were the one group that we have not dealt with. I haven't dealt with them. But the Arab countries are going to, and Muslim countries are going to be dealing with Hamas, and I believe they've already been there. I think they probably have an understanding, and they haven't maybe mentioned that, but I would imagine they do. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gone as far as they've gone. If they're unable to do so, then Israel would have the absolute right and actually our full backing, the U.S. full backing. Marco's here, and a lot of our leaders are here, our great Vice President, Susie Wiles, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner. They've been so involved in this process. I don't think anybody else could have done it or even come close. But it's we're right there. We're right there. First time in thousands of years, I think you can probably say, if you really look into it, if you study back, if you're a scholar, you would say thousands of years. Israel would have my full backing to finish the job of destroying the threat of Hamas. But I hope that we're going to have a deal for peace. And if Hamas rejects the deal, which is always possible, they're the only one left. Everyone else has accepted it. But I have a feeling that we're going to have a positive answer. But if not, as you know, Bibi, you'd have our full backing to do what you would have to do. Everyone understands that the ultimate result must be the elimination of any danger posed in the region, and that danger is caused by Hamas. The tyranny of terror has to end, and this is, again, something that we're looking for. This is eternity. This is for forever. To ensure the success of this effort, my plan calls for the creation of a new international oversight body, the Board of Peace, we call it, the Board of Peace, sort of a beautiful name, the Board of Peace, which will be headed, not at my request, believe me, I'm very busy, but we have to make sure this works. The leaders of the Arab world and Israel and everybody involved asked me to do this, so it would be headed by a gentleman known as President Donald J. Trump of the United States. That's what I want, is some extra work to do, but it's so important that I'm willing to do it, and we'll do it right, and we're going to put leaders from other countries on, and leaders that are very distinguished leaders, and we'll have a board, and one of the people that wants to be on the board is the UK former Prime Minister, Tony Blair, good man, very good man, and some others. And they'll be named over the next few days. And it'll be quite the board. Working, everybody wants to be on it now. I don't know if that had anything to do. They named me and everybody else wanted to be on it. I guess they figure, well, he's a soft touch. He'll be easy to deal with. Working with the World Bank and others, it'll be responsible for recruiting and training a new government that will be made up of Palestinians, along with highly qualified experts from all around the world. Hamas and other terrorist factions will play no role in the board, but they'll play no role in the governance of Gaza at all, directly or indirectly. As you know, thousands of Hamas leaders have been killed and soldiers have been killed. And we can never forget October 7th, but thousands have paid the price for that. And now it's time to get our hostages back and get back to trying to build something that's really great and very important. In our meeting today, Prime Minister Netanyahu was very clear about his opposition. to a Palestinian state. And he continuously mentions October 7th, and I understand that. Most people do. And I understand and respect his position on many things, but what he's doing today is so good for Israel. And I noticed that they have large crowds gathering in Israel all the time, and they have my name up. They like me for whatever reason, maybe I don't know, but they do like me. But they say two things: please get the hostages back, and please end the war. They've had it. It's had it. So I think it's a very popular thing you do, because he's a warrior. He doesn't know about getting back to a normal way of life, but he is a warrior, and Israel's lucky to have him. But now the people want to get back to peace. They want to get back to normalization in a true sense. Several countries have foolishly recognized the Palestinian state. As you know, some of our European friends, allies, good people, but they're really, I think, doing that because they're very tired of what's going on for so many decades. They've been presidents and prime ministers for years, and during this time, having to do with the Middle East, all they're doing is talking about the same thing over and over. They want to see it get back. And nobody wants that more than me, or I believe Bibi too. But the people of Israel want it. They really want it. They want the hostages back. That includes the probably 32 bodies that we're talking about, 20 people that are living, 32 or so people that are dead, and they want to have peace. So let us not forget how we got here. Hamas was elected by the Palestinian people. Israel withdrew from Gaza thinking they would live in peace. Remember that a long time ago? They withdrew. They said, you take it. This is our contribution to peace. But that didn't work out. That didn't work out. It was the opposite of peace. They pulled away. They let them have it. And I never forgot that, because I said, that doesn't sound like a good deal to me. As a real estate person, I mean, they gave up the ocean, right? Ron, they gave up the ocean. They said, who would do this deal? And it still didn't work out. They were very generous, actually. And they gave up the most magnificent piece of land in many ways in the Middle East. And they said, all we want to do now is have peace. And that request was not honored. Instead of building a better life for the Palestinians, Hamas diverted resources to build over 400 miles of tunnels and terror infrastructure, rocket production facilities, and hid their military command posts and launch sites in hospitals, schools, and mosques. So if you went after them, you'd be after them, and you wouldn't even realize you ended up knocking out a hospital or school or a mosque. A terrible thing, terrible, terrible way to have to fight. No fight is good, but that's a real bad one. So there are many Palestinians who wish to live in peace. Many. I've seen so many of them. And they have support. And I challenge the Palestinians to take responsibility for their destiny, because that's what we're giving them. We're giving them responsibility for their destiny, fully condemn and prohibit terrorism and earn their way to a brighter future. They don't want the life that they've had. They've had a rough life with Hamas. If the Palestinian Authority does not complete the reforms that I laid out in my vision for peace in 2020, they'll have only themselves to blame. We're giving them an amazing footprint, and they have amazing support from the leaders of the Arab world and the Muslim world, the great leaders. These are great leaders. These are unbelievable leaders that have built great countries and very wealthy countries. What the future holds for the Palestinians, no one really knows, but the plan that we put forward today is focused on ending the war immediately, getting all of our hostages back, getting everything back. Hard to believe when you even say it, and creating conditions for durable Israeli security and Palestinian success. Israeli security is going to be involved. We're going to help you. We'll be there with you in terms of helping with security. We want to make sure it works. We just want to make sure it works. There shouldn't be a shot fired. Now, there will be, I guess, because that's the way it seems to be, but there shouldn't have to be within a few days. There shouldn't have to be a shot fired. And maybe for eternity. Wouldn't that be nice? I hope it's true. I can tell you the leadership of that region feels that there's a good chance of it being true. So this will lead to this agreement that we're talking about will lead to a sustainable long-term peace. No president in history has been a greater friend of the state of Israel than I have, in addition to negotiating the Abraham Accords. I like to say it that way because the real people, that's what they call Abraham. I would say Abraham, but it's so much nicer when you say Abraham. So much more elegant. But the Abraham Accords are amazing. Jared, you did that along with your group of geniuses, and nobody thought that could be done. We have 4 countries, and Sleepy Joe Biden didn't do a thing. He didn't even know what the hell they were. He should have had them filled up. But I think this will also lead to packing them. And who knows, maybe even Iran can get in there. I hope, we hope we're going to be able to get along with Iran. I think they're going to be open to it. I really believe that. But they could be a member. I long ago said, I'll bet you at some point Iran will be a member of the Accords. And little did I realize it was going to take this turn. That was some turn we did with the B-2s. But I think they might very well be there because it's a great thing for them economically. I recognize the eternal capital of Israel. I opened the American embassy in Jerusalem. That was something that everyone said would never be done, could never be done. Virtually every president for many, many years, for decades, would campaign on making Jerusalem the capital of Israel. They campaigned on it over and over. Is that right, Steve? Is that right? Everyone, and when they got to it, and I understand why now, because it was so. When I got to office, I campaigned on it too. I said, we're going to make it. And then I'd get calls from the leaders of various countries saying, please don't do it. Please don't do it. It'll end the whole world. Please don't do it. And finally, I just didn't say anything, and I did it. People were calling me before I did it because I heard I was going to do it. And leaders of countries were calling me. And I think it was on a Thursday that I did it. And they'd call me Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 3-4 times a day. And I said, tell them I'll call them back on Friday. And I announced it on Thursday. And I called them back, the biggest people in the world. And they said, you've done it. I said, done what? You've made the capital of Israel, Jerusalem. And we wanted to talk yet. I wish you called me a little sooner. Maybe I could have done something about it. So that was a lot easier than getting into an argument, because I knew what they were calling about. And you know what? It turned out to be amazing. Everybody thought it was going to lead to the end of the world, right? The end of the world, Ron. That's what they said. It didn't lead to anything. It just led to something that I promised, and something that was very, very popular for Jewish people and a lot of other people, too. I recognize Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, and I cut taxpayer funding to the corrupt United Nations Relief and Works Agency. And United Nations was interesting because, as you know, a few days ago, they introduced me. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States. I'm looking at my teleprompter, and the thing was dead, stone cold, dead. The thing's up here. I have a long, beautiful speech to make. I'm back 30 feet back, and I'm saying, they're introducing me. There's nothing on my teleprompter. So, but I made a speech. I actually got good marks. You think Biden could have done that? I don't think so. I don't think he could have done that. I don't think too many people could have done it. But actually, it was actually more of a speech from my heart, if you want to know the truth. I think it was maybe better in certain ways because it was from the heart. It has to be from the heart. Otherwise, you're in big trouble. But I cut taxpayer funding for that very corrupt United Nations Relief and Works Agency, and nobody thought that would be done, and withdrew from the horrible Iran nuclear deal that was imposed upon Israel by Barack Hussein Obama and Biden. And I don't think Biden knew anything about it, though. I don't think he knows anything about it now, actually, if you ask him. He'd say, what is that? And we obliterated Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity, making it impossible for them to have a nuclear weapon, which they would have had probably in about 2 months from that. But I've never asked Israel to compromise its security. But we had big, strong talk. Nobody's been better to Israel. No president's been better to Israel than Donald Trump. But we had a long, strong talk, Bibi and I, and he understands it's time. It's time. History has shown. And the people of Israel want it. And the people of the Middle East want it. The people of enemies of Israel want it. But they don't have really too many enemies right now. And you know what? Many countries have gained great respect for Israel, for the way they fight, for the job they do, including me. I had respect anyway, but they gained respect. History has shown us that those who have relations with Israel have thrived, while those who have devoted resources and attention toward the destruction and even annihilation of Israel have languished. They haven't done well. Israel is not going anywhere. They're going to coexist with other people and countries in the region, from Syria to Lebanon to Saudi Arabia. The promise of a new Middle East is so clearly within our reach. This is the closest we've ever come to real peace, not fake peace, not political fool's peace. If we can get this difficult problem solved, the opportunities for all within that vast region of this world, it's a vast region, it's unlimited. The Abraham Accords show that all countries are better off when they communicate and work together and embrace new opportunities. I hope Jared and Steve and Susie and Marco and JD, we have great people. I hope you guys are going to work very hard to get these other countries in, because now they have no excuse. There's no longer an excuse. They were somewhere hesitant. And I tell you, the 4 countries that went in, I give them tremendous credit. And it's worked out incredibly well for them. In the same spirit, I'm pleased to report that earlier today, we took another important step toward greater understanding in the region. A short time ago, we had a historic phone call in the Oval Office with Prime Minister Tani, who's really a great, great person. So we had a great talk, and I was on the phone, and Bibi was talking. Prime Minister Al-Thani was of Qatar. They really had a heart-to-heart conversation. It was a great conversation, I thought. It was productive. It was everything that you need to have something turn out to be successful. And I want to thank Bibi, and I want to thank the Prime Minister. It was fantastic. We agreed to launch a formal trilateral mechanism between Israel, Qatar, and the United States to begin a dialogue to enhance mutual security, correct misperceptions, and avoid future misgivings. And I want to thank Qatar, its leadership, and the Emir. He's a fantastic person. I think, you know, I'm going to be his public relations man because I know him differently than a lot of people know him. But he wants peace. He wants to see peace. And its people, and they really acknowledge the critical role that they've played as mediator. And again, we're not quite finished. We have to get Hamas, but I think they're going to be able to do that. So now it's time for Hamas to accept the terms of the plan that we've put forward today. And again, this is a different Hamas than we were dealing with, because I guess over 20,000 have been killed. Their leadership has been killed 3 times over. So you're really dealing with different people than we've been dealing with over the last 4 years, 5 years. Everyone has done their part and come to the table in good faith. Our Arab and Muslim partners are fully prepared to step up and fulfill their commitments for the benefit of the people of Gaza and the entire region. They're willing to step up and do a lot. They really are. There are a lot of good people involved. Everybody who wants to see an end to the violence and destruction should be united in calling for Hamas to accept the extremely fair proposal so that we can end the war and get us back our hostages right now and have everlasting peace. And I look forward to having relationships with everyone. As the chairman of the board, I'll be involved, and we'll have meetings with some very smart people that'll be working over there to make sure that we haven't just been wasting time with an agreement that doesn't get done. The task of building peace will not be easy. There are some of the hardest problems in the world to solve, and that's why it's been going on for so many centuries. But too many lives are at stake not to try, and this is more than a try. I mean, I think this is something that that gets done when you have virtually every country, and these are powerful, powerful countries that have a lot of money, and the money can make things happen. A lot of countries try, and they don't have any money. These are very rich countries that can make things happen. So together we'll forge a much safer and more hopeful future for everybody, including Israel. And I want to thank Prime Minister Netanyahu for his partnership, and I want to thank all of the leaders, the kings and the emirs and the presidents and prime ministers, people I mentioned. And they've been absolutely fantastic to work with, and it's just happened very quickly. It's happened from a couple of weeks before I had a meeting, a couple of meetings, but a couple of weeks before we went to the United Nations, and we had some incredible meetings. It all came to place. It all took place, and everybody wanted to be a part of it. I don't have anybody that's saying we don't want anything to do with it. It's just the opposite. And I'll tell you, a couple of years ago, a year ago, I don't think we would have had this kind of participation, Mr. VP, right? I don't think we would have had. It's been amazing. The participation was 100%. Everybody wants to be a part of it. And everybody, those very strong countries, everybody wants it to work. So, Bibi, congratulations on this. I think this will be your crowning achievement, frankly. If this all works out, we think it will. It's going to be your crowning achievement, and I want to thank you very much for being here. Thank you, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. President, first I want to thank you for graciously hosting me once again in the White House. And second, I want to thank you for your friendship and for your leadership. From Jerusalem to Tehran, from the Golan Heights to Gaza, you've proven time and again what I've said many times. You are the greatest friend that Israel has ever had in the White House. And Mr. President, you and I both know it's not even close. While you focus at home on making America great again, your leadership abroad is changing the world for the better, ending wars and advancing peace. I believe that today we're taking a critical step towards both ending the war in Gaza and setting the stage for dramatically advancing peace in the Middle East. And I think beyond the Middle East, in very important Muslim countries. I support your plan to end the war in Gaza, which achieves our war aims. It will bring back to Israel all our hostages, dismantle Hamas's military capabilities, end its political rule, and ensure that Gaza never again poses a threat to Israel. We would not have achieved this turning point without the courage and sacrifice of our incredibly brave soldiers. They fight like lions to defend the people of Israel, and they serve on the front line in the war between civilization and barbarism. Mr. President, when our two countries stand shoulder to shoulder, we achieve the impossible. Just a few months ago, in Operation Rising Lion and Operation Midnight Hammer, we struck a decisive blow against Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile program. Your bold decision to send those B-2s made the region safer and the world safer. Now, under your leadership, we're taking the next step to win the war and expand the peace. Your plan is consistent with the 5 principles my government set for the end of the war and the day after Hamas. Everybody asks, what is your plan for the day after Hamas? Here's our plan. Passed it in the cabinet. All our hostages, both those who are alive and those who died, all of them will return home immediately. Hamas will be disarmed. Gaza will be demilitarized. Israel will retain security responsibility, including a security perimeter for the foreseeable future. And lastly, Gaza will have a peaceful civilian administration that is run neither by Hamas nor by the Palestinian Authority. If Hamas agrees to your plan, Mr. President, the first step will be a modest withdrawal, followed by the release of all our hostages within 72 hours. The next step will be the establishment of an international body charged with fully disarming Hamas and demilitarizing Gaza. I appreciate your willingness to lead the body, Mr. President. I really appreciate it because you have a lot of things to do, and this is important. And it reflects the confidence that this will give everyone, that things will be followed up on all the commitments made. The fact that you're taking this on, I think, helps a lot to make sure that everything flows in the direction that we want. Now, if this international body succeeds, we will have permanently ended the war. Israel will conduct further withdrawals linked to the extent of disarmament and demilitarization, but will remain in the security perimeter for the foreseeable future. I think we should understand that we're giving everybody a chance to have this done peacefully, something that will achieve all our war objectives without any further bloodshed. But if Hamas rejects your plan, Mr. President, or if they supposedly accept it and then basically do everything to counter it, then Israel will finish the job by itself. This can be done the easy way, or it can be done the hard way, but it will be done. We prefer the easy way, but it has to be done. All these goals must be achieved because we didn't fight this horrible fight, sacrifice the finest of our young men to have Hamas stay in Gaza and threaten us again and again and again with these horrific massacres. Mr. President, I was encouraged by your clear statement at the UN against the recognition of a Palestinian state. That would be an outcome that, after October 7th, would reward terrorists, undermine security, and endanger Israel's very existence. As for the Palestinian Authority, I appreciate your firm position that the PA could have no role whatsoever in Gaza without undergoing a radical and genuine transformation. In your 2020 peace plan, which you mentioned just now, you made clear what that transformation requires. It's not lip service. It's not checking a box. It's a fundamental, genuine, and enduring transformation. And that means ending pay to slay, changing the poisonous textbooks that teach hatred to Jews, to Palestinian children, stopping incitement in the media, ending lawfare against Israel at the ICC, the ICJ, recognizing the Jewish state, and many, many other reforms. It won't come as a surprise to you that the vast majority of Israelis have no faith that the PA Leopard will change its spots. But rather than wait for this miraculous transformation, your plan provides a practical and realistic path forward for Gaza in the coming years, in which Gaza will be administered neither by Hamas nor the Palestinian Authority, but by those committed to a genuine peace with Israel. I think this can be not only a new beginning for Gaza, I think it can be a new beginning for the entire region. Under your leadership, we can re-energize, well, I've got to contribute my own, we can re-energize the Abraham Accords. That's what it's called in the original Hebrew, Abraham. Abraham is fine, Abraham, however you want to call it. Under your leadership, Mr. President, we can re-energize the Abraham Accords that we forged 5 years ago. We can expand them to many more Arab and Muslim nations that choose moderation over extremism. I think there's an opportunity here. It's not going to be easy, it's tough going, but I think if we succeed, you're absolutely right. We're going to open possibilities that nobody even dreamed of. But I think we dream of them. as you've told me, Mr. President, and you've told the world many, many times, you said, remember October 7th. Remember October 7th. And we do. We will never forget the horrors of October 7th, and we will do whatever is necessary to make sure they don't happen again. Since October 7th, Israel's enemies have learned a hard truth. Those who attack us pay a heavy price, but those who partner with us advance progress and security for their peoples. President Trump just said it. It's also in the Bible. It says, those who will bless you will be blessed, and those who will curse you will be cursed. And that's actually what is happening. We want the blessings. I think we've done a lot in the past 2 years to end the curse. We're not finished, but we've done a lot. And we've done a lot together to end the curse. I want to thank your entire team for their efforts to get to this point. I especially want to thank Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner for their indefatigable work to bring Israel and Arab states in the region closer together. I am deeply grateful to both of them for their work. We had a phone call today just to make it clear. I said to the Prime Minister of Qatar, Israel was targeting terrorists, wasn't targeting Qatar. And of course, we regretted the loss of the Qatari citizen. It wasn't our target. And I very much appreciate President Trump's proposal to have a trilateral body, the United States, Israel, and Qatar, to work out respective grievances. There are quite a few. But if we could try to mitigate them or put it on a different footing, I think that'll be good for everyone. Above all the people, the fine team, the many helpers who've done this, I want to thank you, Mr. President. History has already shown that under your leadership, Israel and America can change the face of the Middle East. And today I'm hopeful that your plan to end the war in Gaza will do so again and do so soon. It will free our hostages, end Hamas's tyranny in Gaza, and enable a more secure and prosperous future for the peoples of our region. Thank you, Mr. President. May God bless America. May God bless Israel. May God bless the indispensable alliance between our countries. And may I add in Hebrew, may we all be inscribed in the book of life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bibi. So I think while we wait for these documents to be signed and get everybody in line, I think it maybe is not really appropriate to take questions. I'm meeting with, as you know, a couple of Democrats in a little while about the country, about keeping our country open. They're going to have to do some things because their ideas are not very good ones. They're very bad for our country. So we'll see how that works out. But this is something that was really historic today. This was something that was amazing. I think, Bibi, I mean, depending on you, I think while we're waiting for signatures and waiting for approvals from a lot of different countries that are involved in this, we probably shouldn't take questions, or would you like to take a question or two from perhaps a friendly Israeli reporter, if there's such a thing?
That's a very, very tough proposition. But I would think, Mr. President, that I would go by your instinct that this is, we'll have enough time for questions. Let's settle the issue first, I think.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you.
That concludes two statements by the President of the United States and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. They unveiled a 20-point peace plan that has been agreed to, says the president, by a number of Arab and Muslim countries. Prime Minister Netanyahu endorsed the plan as well. They both referred to it as a historic turning point. The big question left over after this is what Hamas believes. It was neither consulted, nor do we have any idea about what the group, how the group will respond. So let's turn now to Weijia Zhang, our senior White House correspondent. Weijia is inside the press room where no questions were allowed. Weijia, your reaction?
John, I think that it was very telling that the president announced that he and the prime minister would not be taking any questions, because there are certainly plenty of those left, even after the president made lengthy statements about the White House's 20-point peace plan to end the war in Gaza. Of course, the most pressing question right now of all is whether the United States has formally presented this plan to Hamas and when they expect an answer. The Prime Minister, Netanyahu, said that he does support this plan, but there are also questions there, John, about what details he might have issue with, because it should be pointed out that just last week, President Trump said he would not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. Very tough words. And in the proposal that was released today, it only stipulates that Israel would not annex Gaza, with no mention of the West Bank. There's also an issue of Palestinian statehood. Netanyahu made very explicit that Israel would not accept that. But, John, I have to tell you, in this proposal, it seems to leave the door open for that, because it says if the Palestinian Authority reform program is completed, there could be a credible pathway to a Palestinian statehood. So there are still several areas of discomfort, to say the least, between these two countries. And because we don't have clarity from the leaders directly, John, we will have to continue to report that out for you today.
Indeed. Weijia Zhang at the White House after this statement. Just a few more details about it. The plan calls for an immediate end to the war and the release of all Israeli hostages in exchange for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. Again, as we mentioned, Hamas has not agreed to any of this, but must completely disarm and relinquish all governing roles. The Palestinian Authority must change fundamentally for this future that the president and the prime minister outlined, and that there would be an international stabilization force inside Gaza. There would be the international stabilization force would be overseen by a board, and that board would be chaired by President Trump, and then Gaza would be rebuilt and run by a kind of technocratic government. So it is a painting of a future that the president says has been ratified by a number of Arab and Muslim states. Again, as Weijia pointed out, a lot of complicated details, though, getting from this moment to that future. Not only does Hamas have to respond, but then, of course, Prime Minister Netanyahu will have to see how his political supporters, what they think of this deal back home. Senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe now joins us. Ed, your reaction?
Well, John, the document that you mentioned that Weijia was talking about, it has these 20 points that the Israeli prime minister now says that he is on board with, and so we're waiting to hear from Hamas. The issue, though, is even if they agree to this in theory or in general, almost every line of this could be debated for weeks, if not months, endlessly between the various parties. For example, members of Hamas who wish to leave Gaza will be provided safe passage to receiving countries. Oh, how do you guarantee that? Who are the receiving countries? What happens to those people once they get to those receiving countries? Is their safety assured? Might be one subject of debate. Full aid will be immediately sent into the Gaza Strip. At a minimum, aid quantities will be consistent with what was included in a January 2025 agreement. Again, how would it be distributed? Who would oversee it? How do you double check to make sure that it is in fact just aid and not anything else, which of course has been a sticking point over the last several months when aid has been held up? This whole transitional governance, technocratic, apolitical Palestinian committee responsible for doing day-to-day running of the operations, qualified Palestinians and international experts. Who gets to define that they're qualified or that they're experts? All of this could be subject, again, to lengthy debate. But you could see there the president quite eager to get this issue moving ahead, recalling the conversations he had last week with a handful of predominantly Muslim or Arab countries who are also eager to see a resolution to this. And that's why when you hear them talk about a broader plan for the Middle East, it is that idea that these other countries want to see this resolved as well. It's not just Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Egypt, but you heard about Turkey. Indonesia's been involved, and other countries in that broader region who would like to see peace and would like to see economic investment as well, both in Israel and the Gaza Strip and the redevelopment there, but across that region. So lots of work for a president to do on the same day as he mentioned that he now has to walk into a tricky domestic meeting and conduct some diplomacy there between Republicans and Democrats over whether or not the federal government's going to keep the lights on after tomorrow night. We know the two Democratic leaders, Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, are on their way over here right now for a meeting that was scheduled to begin about 14 minutes ago, but will obviously extend into the afternoon. A busy one here at the White House, John.
Absolutely, Ed O'Keefe, a busy one for the president and a busy day for you as well. Let's turn to senior foreign correspondent Imtiaz Tayyip. Imtiaz, picking up on Ed O'Keefe's point, but also, of course, to get your first reactions. This is sort of like that old expression, the wish, the father of the thought, which is to say to paint a future that the president and the prime minister want, that they hope is big enough for all of the countries the president's named, which include everything from Pakistan to Indonesia, to create a future that is big enough that those Arab states, as the president said, will put sufficient pressure on Hamas to get Hamas to agree. That's a big ask. Your reaction to this today?
Well, look, this document itself is extraordinary, these 20 points. And as Ed so clearly articulated, some of the big questions that still revolve around them as well. But I think what I can tell you is that we have reached out to Hamas to try to get some sort of response from them. As you know, there's a 5-member leadership group in Doha, the very target of that strike by Israel just a few weeks ago in the Qatari capital. I'll mention that phone call that Mr. Netanyahu had with the Qatari leader in a moment, but the big question is will Hamas accept this? It seems like, given the pressure and the influence that Qatar has, that there is a reasonable chance that the Qatari leadership, or rather the Hamas leadership, will. They're under extraordinary pressure, not just from Qatar, but indeed from your average Palestinian who has suffered really under 2 years of terrible war. But one of the things I think that struck me the most, John, is something that you nodded to, which is the real sort of globalization of this proposal. You'll remember we once had a Biden proposal, and then we had an earlier Trump proposal. This proposal, which is the most detailed, is, again, one of the most globalized. There, as we've been hearing from President Trump himself repeatedly, Arab countries, Muslim countries, European countries, who have all wanted to see some sort of solution in Gaza. But what I'd also add is what was so interesting listening to both the president and the prime minister is that Prime Minister Netanyahu, in his statement, was really talking to the Israeli people to try to get the Israeli people to accept this deal, but not just the Israeli people, his extreme far-right coalition, a coalition which is bitterly opposed to ending the war in Gaza, which is bitterly opposed to withdrawing Israeli forces from Gaza. We also know that they're incredibly angry about that phone call that Mr. Netanyahu had with the Qatari leadership in Israel. Qatar is seen as a rogue state, a state that finances Hamas, that is seen, of course, as this terrorist organization. And so Mr. Netanyahu, as he leaves Washington and goes to Israel, will be facing a maelstrom of criticism from within and indeed from those on the streets who have been on the streets for 2 years nearly now, demanding this war end and that the hostages be released. John.
Imtiaz Tayyip, thank you so much. I think as a final concluding point, we've between Imtiaz and Ed O'Keefe and we can really embrace the old cliche that the devil will be in the details of this sweeping announcement made today by the president and the prime minister of Israel about a 20-point plan for securing peace in Gaza. We will report on all of those details from now until many months to come. Our coverage will continue on CBS News 24/7, your local news, and tonight on the CBS Evening News. This has been a CBS News Special Report. I'm John Dickerson.
Happening right now, when we see it, you see it, and you see President Donald Trump sitting down in the Oval Office with the Saudi Crown Prince. Let's listen in.
We've done things that nobody can believe. $21 trillion will be the amount invested in the United States or committed to invest in 1 year. So I'm here 9 months. We're up to almost $18 trillion. Biden, as an example, the Biden administration, if you call it that, it's not, to me, it was the Biden lack of administration. They were less than $1 trillion for 4 years. We're going to be $21 trillion for 1 year. I think that's hard to believe. The biggest in history was a certain country, $3 trillion. We're going to be $21 trillion. On top of that, prices are coming down. We inherited a mess with high prices. The worst inflation in the history of our country. We had inflation that was a single 4 years, the worst inflation in the history of the United States. Gas prices through the roof, and that's after destroying our petroleum reserve, which was meant for wars and big emergencies, not to try and win an election. They opened up the reserve so that people get $3 less in gasoline, and it didn't work. They got about 3 cents less, because as big as those reserves are, they're peanuts when you're talking about that kind of traffic. And we're rebuilding the reserves. We're doing all of this, and we've done a job. We're also bringing down prices very substantially, and we've already brought them down very, very substantially. Gasoline is way down. I think you'll be seeing $2 gasoline, but we're now at $2.50, $2.45. Some are lower than that. It was $4.50, $5, $6, $3.50, $3.75. Under Biden, all different numbers, but way high. And we have energy way down. But the biggest thing to me, because I know what it means in jobs, is the fact that we're at over $17 trillion, Scott, and we expect to be around $21 trillion in 1 year. And that's many times bigger than in history. The highest number was $3 trillion. And we're going to be at $21 trillion. That means new plants, new AI, new auto plants. We have auto plants coming in from Canada, from Mexico, from Germany, from Japan. Toyota just agreed to invest $10 billion on new auto plants, all American workers. We've never been in a position like this. You can go back to the beginning. Our country has never been in a position like this. And it really is because of the fact that we use tariffs to bring all this money in. And you're going to see the results in a year when these plants start to open up. We have more plants under construction now than at any time in the history of our country. And these are big plants. These are the biggest plants anywhere in the world. And I want to thank you because you've agreed to invest $600 billion into the United States. And because he's my friend, he might make it $1 trillion, but I'm going to have to work on him. But it's 600. We can count on 600 billion. But that number could go up a little bit higher, yes, sir. I don't know. We'll see. But we appreciate it very much. So Saudi is going to be investing at least $600 billion, and that means investments in plants, in companies, money on Wall Street. And what it really means for everybody that really counts is jobs, a lot of jobs. We have a lot of jobs. So I just want to thank you. We've been really good friends for a long period of time. We've always been on the same side of every issue. I think we've done a great job in wiping out the nuclear capacity of Iran. Nobody else could have done that. No other president would have done it. We had the pilots in the Oval Office right here. We were celebrating a very successful attack. So I had them in with that beautiful B-2 bomber that's over there. And they said, sir, for 22 years, we practiced this attack. Our predecessors, these were very young guys, so 22 years, they said our predecessors and us practiced the attack on Iran. But no president ever gave us the go-ahead. 3 times a year they went out and they practiced the attack. Nobody let us do it until you came along, and I let them do it because it was the right thing to do. You can't have a nuclear Iran. And so we put you in a very good position. But I just want to say it's an honor to be your friend, and it's an honor that you're here. And if you'd like to say a few words, but thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. This relation has been a relation for about 9 decades, and we've been working together for a long time. But today it's very important time in our history, because there is also a lot of things that we're working on in the future. We believe in the future of the United States of America. We believe in what you're doing, Mr. President, really creating a lot of good things and good foundation to create more economic growth, more business in America. And it will also your work for the world peace. I believe, Mr. President, today and tomorrow we're going to announce that we are going to increase that $600 billion to almost $1 trillion of investment, real investment and real opportunity by details in many areas. And the agreement that we are signing today in many areas in technology, in AI, in earth materials, magnet, etc., that will create a lot of investment opportunities.
So you are doing that now. You're saying to me now that the $600 billion will be $1 trillion.
Definitely, because what we are signing, it will facilitate that. And
I like that very much. Go ahead.
You worked hard.
No, that's great. I appreciate that. That's great. We're doing numbers that nobody's ever done. And in all fairness, if you didn't see potential in the U.S., you wouldn't be doing that.
Definitely.
You don't want to lose money.
As you said, Mr. President, it's the most hottest country in the planet. But what you're creating is not about opportunity today. It's about also long-term opportunity in the United States of America that will affect American economy positively in the next coming decades. Preparing the right foundation of emerging technologies, that's a game changer for America in a good way, and we want to be part of it.
Yeah, we're doing really well. And this, you don't see what we're doing so much because we have, although the construction industry sees it. If you look at Caterpillar, who's been incredible, the tractors, everything else, the numbers that we're doing in construction are unbelievable. Some of the plants that we're building, AI, and they're building their own electric with the plant. I gave them the right to build their own electric with the plant because no country, frankly, will have this. China's working very hard to produce enough electric, but we're beating China substantially at AI, which is a big thing. And we had a great meeting 2 weeks ago with President Xi, but on AI, we're doing well. And I have a man, David Rommel.
Yes, sir.
David, could you say a few words about what you're seeing on the job front and all of the some of the assets, and also how we've been helped by the Saudis in terms of the kind of investment they've made, please.
Yeah, most certainly. Thank you for the opportunity. I am a facility leader for GE Vernova, and if you look at the landscape for GE Vernova investment, over $750 million in the U.S. focused on true manufacturing jobs here stateside. We're looking at tripling the output of our Greenville, South Carolina facility, where we make the gas turbines that are supporting U.S. needs as well as the Saudi Arabia needs.
Right.
So real jobs, $300 million in gas investment, resulting in over 500 pieces of new equipment being installed in the Greenville, South Carolina facility. That translates into roughly 1,800 jobs across the board for GE Vernova as we try to scale capacity to be able to meet this demand. Along with that, we're partnering with local communities to build the skill set that's required to meet these capacity needs. So that talent pipeline is incredibly important. So it's real jobs in the manufacturing space.
Well, you've been great, and thank you very much. And we love that state. I won that state by record numbers. I won a lot of states by record. Texas, a lot of them by Indiana. We're working with Indiana or something right now. We won that. We won a lot of them by records, but that was one of them. I want to thank you very much. Say hello to everybody. Great job. You're doing a great job. Thank you. So just in wrapping up, we'll take a couple of questions, but I want to just tell you what an honor it is to be your friend. And I very much appreciate the investment of now $1 trillion, okay? I'm glad you got that out. I didn't want to be the one to tell them, but that's great news.
We keep increasing, Mr. President.
I know.
Each time the opportunities are just increasing more and more.
Well, the opportunities, right? We're doing better. Even if you look back 6 months ago, I mean, all of a sudden you feel even better. So, and I think we're only going to go in one way. Does anybody have any questions?
Mr. President, have you approved the export licenses for advanced chips to Saudi Arabia? The export licenses?
We are working on that. We're negotiating that right now. Marco, do you want to talk about that, or Scott?
Well, I mean, that's part of what we may have announcements on that later today. But that's what we've been working on is the mechanics by which something like that could be achieved, and it's part of the broader process, part of this broader engagement and cooperation between our two countries.
Certain levels of chips. Yeah.
And for the Crown Prince, Your Royal Highness,
You're talking about $1 trillion of investment. Could the kingdom continue to do that with oil prices in the mid-60s?
Yeah, we are not creating fake opportunities to, please America, please President Trump. It's real opportunities. For example, when you ask about the AI and the chips, Saudi Arabia have a huge demand a huge need of computing power, and we're going to spend in the short term around $50 billion by consuming those semiconductors for our needs in Saudi Arabia. And with the agreement that we're going to have with North America, that will allow us to focus that consuming power in the short term by $50 billion from North America, and long term with hundreds of billions of dollars in the long term. So there's a lot of real opportunities that fit to our need in Saudi Arabia and fit to our investment strategy.
Mr. President, is it appropriate, Mr. President, for your family to be doing business in Saudi Arabia while you're president? Is that a conflict of interest? And Your Royal Highness, the U.S. intelligence concluded that you orchestrated the brutal murder of a journalist. 9/11 families are furious that you are here in the Oval Office. Why should Americans trust you? And the same to you, Mr. President.
Now, who are you with?
I'm with ABC News, sir.
You're with who?
ABC News, sir.
Fake news, ABC fake news, one of the worst in the business. But I'll answer your question. I have nothing to do with the family business. I have left, and when I've devoted 100% of my energy. What my family does is fine. They do business all over. They've done very little with Saudi Arabia, actually. I'm sure they could do a lot. And anything they've done has been very good. That's what we've done. We've built a tremendous business for a long time. I've been very successful. I decided to leave that success behind and make America very successful. And I've made America more successful by far than it ever was, and that it ever could have been, no matter who was president. There would be nobody bringing in $21 trillion, that I can tell you right now. As far as this gentleman is concerned, he's done a phenomenal job. You're mentioning somebody that was extremely controversial. A lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen. But he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that. You don't have to embarrass our guest by asking a question like that.
Okay, just you ask, Mr. President, you allow me to answer. I feel painful about, families of 9/11 in America, but, we have to focus on reality. Reality based on CIA documents and based on a lot of documents that Osama bin Laden used Saudi people in that event for one main purpose, is to destroy this relation, to destroy the American-Saudi relation. That's the purpose of 9/11. So whoever buying that means they are helping Osama bin Laden's purpose of destroying this relation. He knows that strong relation between America and Saudi Arabia, it's bad for extremism, it's bad for terrorism. And we have to approve him wrong and to build our relation, continue developing our relation. It's critical in the safety of the world. It's critical against extremism and terrorism. About the journalists, it's really painful to hear, anyone that been losing his life for, no real purpose or nothing illegal way, and it's been painful for us in Saudi Arabia. We've did all the right steps of investigation, etc., in Saudi Arabia, and we've improved our system to be sure that nothing happened like that, and it's painful and it's a huge mistake, and we are doing our best that this doesn't happen again.
Mr. President, on this side, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. The Crown Prince has been instrumental in helping lifting the sanctions on Syria. Will there be any joint investment between the U.S. and Syria? And will you visit Damascus?
Are you from Syria?
No, but
Where are you from?
I'm from Palestine.
Oh, you're making a lot of progress, huh? Very good. Well, they like me. The Palestinians like me. The Palestinians are doing very well, actually. I think we're working very closely with a lot of people that make everybody happy, including Israel, the Palestinians, and everybody. That's very interesting. No, I think that I will tell you, the Crown Prince called me, and he specifically asked me if I would lift the sanctions on Syria, because he wants to see Syria make it. As you know, the leader of Syria was just here. We had a great meeting, and he's a strong guy, and I guess you need a strong person to run it. And I think Syria's made tremendous progress. We did lift the sanctions at the request of the Crown Prince. Also, the president of Turkey, Erdogan, called me specifically. He said, if you don't lift the sanctions, Syria doesn't have a chance. If you do, they have a very good chance. And between the two of them and some others, I lifted the sanctions. And the results so far have been pretty good.
Mr. President, can I ask you a question about the F-35s that are being sold to Saudi Arabia? Are these the same ones that are being used by the Israeli military? And if so, how does that allow for the qualitative military edge for Israel? And then I want to ask you, because you brought up the plight of the Palestinians, are you aware of relocation flights to South Africa that are taking place right now?
Which flights?
There are relocation flights that are taking place. Some Palestinians are being charged up to $2,000
I'm not going to South Africa for the G20 because I think their policies on the extermination of people are unacceptable. So I'm not going, so I won't refer to anything having to do with South Africa. South Africa has behaved extremely badly. But I will say that when you look at the F-35 and you're asking me, is it the same? I think it's going to be pretty similar, yeah. You know,
how will that
this is a great ally, and Israel's a great ally. And I know they'd like you to get planes of reduced caliber. I don't think that makes you too happy. They've been a great ally. Israel's been a great ally. And we're looking at that exactly right now. But as far as I'm concerned, I think they are both at a level where they should get top of the line. Yes, please.
Can I just quickly ask for the Crown Prince, if I could just ask about the direct talks between U.S.
It's all right. Steve, 1 second. Go ahead.
Have you reached an agreement on a U.S.-Saudi defense treaty today? And are you going to bring up the Abraham Accords in your discussion?
I already brought them up.
What did you say?
I think I got a positive response. Would you like to respond?
Yeah, so definitely we believe having a good relation with all Middle Eastern countries is a good thing, and we want to be part of the Ibrahim Accord, but we want also to be sure that we secure a clear path of two-state solution. And today we have a healthy discussion with Mr. President that we're going to work on that to be sure that we can prepare the right situation as soon as possible to have that.
I think we're, you know, I don't want to use the word commitment, but we've had a very good talk on the Abraham Accords. We talked about one state, two state. You know, we talked about a lot of things in a short period of time. We'll be discussing it further, too. But I think you have a very good feeling toward the Abraham Accords.
Yes, definitely, Mr. President. We want peace for the Israelis. We want peace for the Palestinians. We want them to coexist peacefully in the region. And we will do our best to reach that day.
And the defense agreement, have you reached agreement on that?
We pretty much have.
Question for the Crown Prince, if I could just finish.
We have reached agreement on that.
Okay. I wanted to ask you about the direct talks between the United States and Iran. Have you been fully briefed on that, and are you concerned at all about how this might impact Saudi security interests?
Well, we are close ally. We'll be working closely together on that issue, and we will do our best to help to reach a deal between the United States of America and Iran, and we believe it's good for Iran's future to have a good deal that will satisfy the region and the world and the United States of America. So we will do our best to see that day happen.
And by the way, Iran does want to make a deal. I can say I think they very badly want to make a deal. I am totally open to it, and we're talking to them, and we start a process. But it would be a nice thing to have a deal with Iran, and we could have done it before the war, but that didn't work out. And something will happen there, I think. But they would very much like, I mean, they may say something else, but they would very much like to have a deal.
Mr. President, you announced that you are going to sell F-35 jets. You are planning, you said you are planning to sell the F-35 jets to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Is it part of the security agreement? And how you assess the defense partnership between Saudi Arabia and the United States? And the question was...
Well, no, I just said it, though. I mean, we're going to sell them F-35s. That's the end of the question, I guess.
Is it part of the security agreement or no?
No, we're going to have a deal. They're going to purchase F-35s. They're buying them from Lockheed, and it's a great plane. We make, by the way, the best military equipment. You saw that during the Iran little skirmish. We make the best planes, the best missiles. We make the best offensive missiles. We make the best military equipment in the world.
Nice. For His Royal Highness, I would like to ask you about how you see the cooperation between the United States and Saudi Arabia in the advanced technological field, especially AI, and how it will support Saudi Arabia to serve its goals to achieve the vision of 2030.
Well, I will try to answer that in short, but definitely there's a lot of interest in many industries between Saudi Arabia and America, and we are signing a lot of agreements in different areas that will really add value to American economy, but also to add value to us in Saudi Arabia. And AI, it's critical for us because one of the long-term
problems that we could have is lack of workforce. As you've seen in the past few years, some of them have reached 30% of the global migration to Saudi Arabia. So we know that to assure the Saudi Arabia GDP growing, with the lack of workforce that we have, we need to use a lot of computing power to replace job in the long term. So that's huge demand in Saudi Arabia, and we want to link it to American private sectors and getting the supply from America. So there's a lot of opportunities in that area.
And we're also involved in AI in Saudi Arabia. So we're working, and we're leading by a lot on AI. Actually a lot. China would be in second place, but we're leading by a lot. And I have to say this, and our relationship with China has been very good. And as far as buying our farm products, they're pretty much on schedule, Scott. I'd like you to call them, say if they could speed it up, it would be good. Okay, but they're pretty much on schedule.
I'm sorry, media, please. If I may, I have a question for both the Crown Prince and President.
Who are you?
Faisal Abbas from Arab News, Saudi Arabia, Your Excellency.
It should be a friendly question.
Your Royal Highness, just picking up on something you just mentioned about how some people try to destroy the relationship between Saudi Arabia and the United States. Perhaps, since the launch of the vision, we've been used to having the bigger picture and that everything fits into the bigger picture. Might you want to elaborate a little bit about where is the relationship, the bilateral relationship, the strategic partnership between Saudi Arabia and the United States heading, and what's the big picture there?
Well, I don't think it's a relation that we can replace it from the Saudi side or the American side. It's a critical relationship for our political attempt, for our economical attempt, for our security, for our military, for many things. And it has been there for 9 decades. And the opportunities that we have today, it's huge. And it seems that it's going to get deeper in the next few decades. And what we are having today and tomorrow with President Trump, it's really a huge new chapter on this relation that will add value to both of us.
When you think about it, I'm just sitting here. You're with the future king, a man who's respected by everybody, a man that doesn't have to be doing this, really. I don't have to be doing it either. And yet we're sitting here taking questions. We didn't say, oh, you can't talk about this. And there's never been transparency like this, even in his country. But there's never been, in our country, that's been acknowledged. But we didn't put restrictions. And I'm saying it's sort of wonderful to be taking questions from all over the world. Everybody's here. This is just a small group representative of tremendous numbers of media that are outside, that are very jealous that these people were so selected. But they're representing a lot of people that are outside. I think it's terrific that we could be sitting here being this open, and I think it's really a wonderful thing. Yeah.
If you don't mind, I have a personal question for you.
Okay, here we go. I should have said that.
So apart from everything you mentioned in your opening remarks, you forgot to mention that you've de-escalated 7 wars since you started. At least in our part of the world, you are seen as a peacemaker. And adding that to all the executive orders and everything else you've mentioned, I really have to wonder, in your speech in Saudi Arabia, I was there, you said that His Royal Highness does not sleep at night thinking how he does things better. We wonder in Saudi Arabia, how do you manage your own time? And what's your formula for management?
He does not sleep much, and I don't sleep much. I think we have the same schedule. We're thinking about our countries. And if you sleep a lot and you're president, we just had one that slept more than any president. He broke every record. He sleeps all the time, during the day, during the night, on the beach. The only guy could fall asleep on the beach with the press watching. No, he's not a sleeper. I'm not a sleeper. We don't. We talk at night. We can talk. I can call him almost any time. He goes, hi, how you doing? It's like the craziest times. But now, when you love your job, when you love your country, and when you're in a position like we are, future king, highly respected, crown prince, and in my case, president, you're thinking about your country. You're thinking about making America great again. We're thinking about keeping Saudi Arabia strong and vital, and in a pretty tough part of the world, tricky part, right? Tricky part. A lot of tricky people, but he thinks about his country, and I think about my country. I don't want to sleep.
President, do you expect a formal civil nuclear deal to be reached soon? Can you talk to us about that aspect of with Saudi Arabia?
I can see that happening.
Do you think that an agreement will happen today?
It's not urgent. it's always when you have civil nuclear, but you have more oil than almost anybody else. We actually have more oil and gas than they do, but I refuse to say that.
And
We have more than we have more than anybody. Can you imagine?
And on the F-35s, are those sales? Israel had reportedly wanted those sales to be conditioned on Saudi Arabia moving to normalized
Israel
relations.
will be happy. Israel is going to be
Is that a
happy.
condition of the F-35?
Israel's aware, and they're going to be very happy. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah, please. Hello.
Hi, hello. My name is Amal Hazani from Sharq al-Awsat newspaper, from Riyadh, of course. I have a question for the Crown Prince and for you, Mr. President. Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, how much you expected from developing the cooperation with the United States in the field of new energy, AI, supply chain? How much you expected from that?
No limit. We just continue pushing forward. There's no limit. So we just push forward for all the opportunities that we have.
You have to understand, this is really a great ally. Just the fact that they're now doing, I came in here at 6, I did not know that. I was pushing for the 1 trillion, but he didn't tell me that. Now he told me. This is a great ally of ours. You know, when you invest $1 trillion, that's national security for us too, because it creates jobs, it creates a lot of things. And I would say, Scott, right, when you hear one country is putting $1 trillion into the United States, that creates national security. And, you know, I think that they don't have to say that, but I think a big part of that is also the fact that tariffs are in play. But even beyond tariffs, that's a real ally that will do that. Creates a lot of power for the United States.
We are also in Saudi Arabia very happy because this much of Saudi money is a function here, and of course it's come back for us for benefits. So it's complementary interest. So this is the I think what's different the friends and allies do.
Well, look, I love the country of Saudi Arabia. I know the people very well. The level of treatment that we go when we go to Saudi Arabia is something that is incredible. And the people like us, and I think they really like America, especially when I'm president. I mean, I don't think they liked America so much maybe for 4 years recently. I think Obama treated Saudi Arabia very, very badly, as you know. And I think Biden didn't have any idea where the hell he was. I don't think Biden knew the difference.
How would you describe the future relationship with Saudi Arabia? I mean, from the strategic aspects, how would you describe that?
Say the relationship is with?
Yeah,
I would say top of the line. It's as good as it can. I don't think it can get much better. We have a country that trusts us, and that's why they make that investment. If they didn't trust us, they couldn't make that investment. And we trust them. They've been very reliable. Now I rebuilt our military in my first term, and we spent trillions of dollars, and we gave away some of it in Afghanistan stupidly because we had stupid people running our country. But we gave away. But that's as much as it was. It's a tiny fraction of what we put here. And we're bringing our military to a new level, the highest level ever. We have those plans to go now. And again, it's all American jobs and everything, so it's good for a lot of reasons. But as far as Saudi is concerned, no, I don't think our relationship could be better. I don't think they had a great relationship under Biden, and I don't think they had a great relationship under Obama. But they have a great relationship under Trump. When we did the Presidential Walk of Fame, you saw that, right? And we're walking, and I asked the Crown Prince, so outside of Trump, because I blow everyone away, who was the best president for Saudi Arabia? And you could maybe, it's an interesting answer, I don't know.
Roosevelt, who started it, which is a Democrat. And Reagan, he's one of the historical presidents that have close ties with Saudi Arabia. But we've worked with all presidents.
Does Trump blow them all away?
No, it's another league, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
And Trump doesn't give a fist pump. I grabbed that hand. I don't give a hell where that hand's been. I grabbed that hand. When remember Biden? He travels for 20 hours, gets out, and he gives a fist bump. No. When you get out of the plane and you got the future king and the man who's one of the most respected people in the world, you shake his hand. You don't give him a fist bump, right? We don't want to ask you about that, but I can't imagine you were thrilled. You were like a little bit surprised. He's a fantastic guy. You don't do that. Yeah, please.
We're getting closer to the end of the year. Have you started the interviews for the Fed chair?
Yes.
Who have you interviewed?
I think I already know my choice.
Who is it?
Well, I liked him, but he's not going to take the job. He refused. You like Treasury better, right?
Much better, sir.
So we are talking to various people. And frankly, I'd love to get the guy currently in there out right now. But people are holding me back. He's done a terrible job, hurting housing a little bit. The truth is, we've been so successful, we've blown past his interest rate stupidity. He's been wrong. That's why I call him too late. He's too late. Jerome Too Late Powell. He was recommended to me by a guy that made a bad choice. And it's too bad. But despite that, it's having very little impact because we have all of these things happening. But it has an impact on housing to a certain extent. He's a fool. He's a stupid man. But we have some very good people.
Yes, sir. You'll be sitting down with them in the near future. And
we have some surprising names, and we have some standard names that everybody's talking about. And we may go the standard way. It's nice to every once in a while go politically correct. But we have some great names. Steve,
Have
please.
you talked to President Maduro of Venezuela yet? Are you still open to that?
He wants to talk.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm open to talk. I talk to everybody. But no, he wants to. They treated us very badly. They sent all of their prison population into the United States, and we're getting them out rapidly. But he sent all of his, and he sends drugs into the United States and other things. No, he treated us badly. He was dealing with a bad president, and he was able to get away. We have now, I think we have the strongest borders anywhere in the world. Nobody's coming in unless they come in legally. We're taking very weak borders where millions of people came in. For the last 6 months, I don't do these reports. They say 0 people have been able to come in. Is that pretty good?
Mr.
I don't know if
President,
that's right, but it's pretty
Mr. President, why wait for Congress to release the Epstein files? Why not just do it now?
It's not the question that I mind, it's your attitude. I think you are a terrible reporter. It's the way you ask these questions. You start off with a man who's highly respected, asking him a horrible, insubordinate, and just a terrible question. And you could even ask that same exact question nicely. You're all psyched up. Somebody psychs you over at ABC. They're going to psych it. You're a terrible person and a terrible reporter. As far as the Epstein files is, I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I threw him out of my club many years ago because I thought he was a sick pervert. And I guess I turned out to be right. But you know who does have? Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, who ran Harvard, was with him every single night, every single weekend. They lived together. They went to his island many times. I never did. Andrew Weissman, I hear. All these guys were friends of his. You don't even talk about those people. You just keep going on the Epstein files. And what the Epstein is a Democrat hoax to try and get me not to be able to talk about the $21 trillion that I talked about today. It's a hoax. Now, I just got a little report, and I put it in my pocket, of all the money that he's given to Democrats. He gave me none, 0, no money to me. But he gave money to Democrats. And people are wise to your hoax. And ABC's, your company, your crappy company, is one of the perpetrators. And I'll tell you something.
So why not just sign it now?
I think the license should be taken away from ABC because your news is so fake and it's so wrong. And we have a great commissioner, the chairman, who should look at that because I think when you come in and when you're 97% negative to Trump and then Trump wins the election in a landslide, that means obviously your news is not credible. and you're not credible as a reporter. So I've answered your question. You should go and look at the Democrats who received money from Epstein, who spent their time. Larry Summers was with him all the time. That creep of the fund guy was with him all the time. What's his name? Who? Reid Hoffman. I don't know Reid Hoffman, but I know he spends a lot of money on the radical left. Reid Hoffman, in my opinion, should be under investigation. He's a sleazebag. And those are the people, but they don't get any press, they don't get any news, and you're not after the radical left because you're a radical left network. But I think the way you ask a question with the anger and the meanness is terrible. You ought to go back and learn how to be a reporter. No more questions from you. Who else has a question?
Prince, very quickly, I want to ask you, how much money is Saudi Arabia giving for Gaza reconstruction?
We are in discussion about that. Still, there is no amount being
It'll be a lot.
named, but we will definitely help.
Yeah, he's going to. It's very important to him.
And a quick follow-up: the International Security Force. Given your pledge, there would be no U.S. boots on the ground. What is the U.S. role going to be in that? And how do you sort of ratify the allegations that this could undermine Palestinian sovereignty and even the path to statehood?
Look, I think we're going to get along great with the Palestinians, and we know their leadership. We just had a very, you hate to say war, but it was a war. Very, very successful. And you could say, really, it was on behalf of everybody. We did that on behalf of everybody. And the outcome was extraordinary because we had the best pilots, the best equipment, the best planes, the best everything. And Israel bought the best equipment. They bought it from us. Everything's from us. It all starts here. This office, I was talking to the Crown Prince a little while. You walk into this office, for somebody from the outside, the Oval Office, it's the most powerful place in the world. You're standing right now in the most powerful place in the world. And no matter how big you are, these are the biggest people, the richest people. They walk into this office. It's special, isn't it? Look at him. He's so happy to be here. But you walk into this office. It's the Oval Office. And we've done a lot of good with this office. I've stopped actually 8 wars. I appreciated your question before. But I've actually stopped 8 wars. I have another one to go with Putin. I'm a little surprised at Putin. It's taken longer than I thought. But we stopped India and Pakistan. I could go through the list. You know the list better than I do. I'm very proud. And I stopped one that was almost ready to start again. You know, there was one that was ready to start. And they're doing very well. So and it all took place right here in the Oval Office, whether by telephone or whether by they came in. Many of these leaders have come in, and they signed their peace deals right here in the Oval Office. So no matter if it's the biggest business people in the world or the greatest leaders in the world, the biggest leaders in the world, like the gentleman on my right, everybody walks into the Oval Office and they say, wow. And now, by the way, the Oval Office is in the kind of condition that it should be in. Whether you look at the walk or the marble floors or anything down the road, we're fixing the White House. We're building one of the greatest ballrooms ever to be built. We have an event tonight, and we're going to have about 118 people because we have a very small room. For 150 years, they've wanted a ballroom, and now you're going to get a great ballroom. And I have to say, I probably made a lot of enemies because in your honor, we're having a dinner tonight, a beautiful dinner tonight, and we have a very small room, right? It's called the East Room, and it's beautiful, it's lovely, but it's like for a little cocktail before you go into a ballroom. It's a very small room. They've wanted a new ballroom for 150 years. We could have sold the big ballroom out 3 times in honor of this gentleman. So I made a lot of enemies because I have a lot of people that are invited tonight or are unable to come because of the size constraint. But you know what we'll do before I leave office? We'll have another dinner because we'll have it ready long before I leave office, and it's going to be beautiful. It's a very popular thing what we're doing. And by the way, no government funds. It's all put up private money, all private money. And in the case, I think there's a restriction on foreigners. Otherwise, I could have asked you just for a check, okay? But there's a restriction. These are all private individuals that put up a lot of money to build the ballroom. Not one penny is being used from the federal government. So it's really a nice thing. But I look forward to it. I just pointed it out. This would be a perfect night to have that ballroom open, Susie. If we had that open, we'd have a lot of people very happy. Right now, we have a lot of unhappy people because they all want to be with us tonight to honor this great man. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Brad. Everybody out. Let's go. Thank you, Brad. Let's go. Thank you, Brad. Let's go. Thank you, Brad. Let's go. Thank you.
CBS News 24/7 with our cameras and crews inside the Oval Office as President Donald Trump has a sit-down meeting with the Saudi Crown Prince. And what was a pretty fiery exchange there. Lots of headlines developing. So, watching it from our nation's capital, live to CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang. So, top takeaways from your vantage point there, Weijia.
Reed, this was a remarkable meeting, the first time that the Crown Prince is visiting the U.S. in this capacity in 7 years. And that is because 7 years ago, the CIA concluded that he was personally the one to order the killing of journalists from the Washington Post, Jamal Khashoggi. And it was quite remarkable to watch a reporter ask the president and MBS about that in the Oval Office. And the president actually, I want to play for you what he had to say. Listen. So we don't have that sound, but Reed, it's important. He said that a lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or you didn't like him, things happen, but he knew nothing about it, meaning the Crown Prince, and we can leave it at that. The president went on to lecture the reporter about not embarrassing the Crown Prince. So the reason why that matters is because that was the CIA under President Trump during his administration, and now he is saying that the Crown Prince knew nothing about the murder of Khashoggi. But we also know that the president really views these relationships with world leaders with a lens that always has to do with deals, whether it's business deals, whether it's political deals, and he really sees Saudi Arabia as such an important relationship. In fact, it's the first country he visited during both terms as president, which says a lot. And during this meeting, they announced $600 billion of investments to the U.S. The president joked that it should be $1 trillion. And he said they privately spoke about the Abraham Accords, which of course are extremely important to the president's foreign policy. And those are the agreements to normalize relationships with Israel. So far, Saudi Arabia is not part of the pact, and that is what Trump really wants to accomplish before he leaves office. And the Crown Prince went on to say that he wants to talk about that, he's open to it, but stressed again that there must be a path to a two-state solution when it comes to the conflict in Gaza. So in short, Reed, you know, the focus of this meeting was obviously to highlight all the various deals when it comes to defense, when it comes to arms sales, when it comes to sales that the U.S. is making, and investments that Saudi Arabia has committed. And again, the president making a lot of news when he said what he did about the reason why MBS has not been here in so many years.
Right, and that was a moment that definitely touched a nerve. It was sort of a study in the topics that touch a nerve with the president. We now have the opportunity, Weijia, to hear that moment that you were teeing up. Let's go ahead and listen to it, and then we can talk about it.
Your Royal Highness, the U.S. intelligence concluded that you orchestrated the brutal murder of a journalist. 9/11 families are furious that you are here in the Oval Office. Why should Americans trust you? And the same to you, Mr. President.
As far as this gentleman is concerned, he's done a phenomenal job. You're mentioning somebody that was extremely controversial. A lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen. But he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that. You don't have to embarrass our guest by asking a question like that.
Okay, just you ask, Mr. President, if you allow me to answer. You know, I feel painful about, you know, the families of 9/11 in America, but, you know, we have to focus on reality. Reality based on CIA documents and based on a lot of documents that Osama bin Laden, he used Saudi people in that event for one main purpose, is to destroy this relation.
So a couple of things of note there, Ouija. When we listened to that played back, of course, you did see the Crown Prince address the families of 9/11 victims. He did not talk about the allegations of coordination of the murder of the journalist. How did you read that?
Well, I think that is what he was prepared to say. Obviously, he has been asked about this before. It is now years old. And being where he was inside the Oval Office at the White House in the United States, it makes sense that he, delivered that particular message without acknowledging his personal involvement in what happened. And Reed, I think what is the takeaway here is this is at least the second time that President Trump has publicly contradicted his own intelligence community in front of a foreign leader. Of course, the other time was famously when he was meeting with Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, and they were talking about interference in the 2016 election. Putin denied it, even though the intelligence community had drawn a different conclusion. And during a press conference, I remember sitting in the room when the president said that he had no reason to believe that Putin was, saying something false, which contradicted the intelligence community. And again, that's exactly what he did today in the Oval Office just a short time ago.
Well, and I would imagine a lot of journalist organizations feel a little chilled at how the President of the United States responded to the question about what is happening on the Hill relative to the Epstein files, talking about the FCC chair. Anything that stood out there in how he answered the reporter's question relative to the Epstein matter?
Well, he began a very lengthy tirade against that reporter who identified herself previously as a correspondent for ABC News. And of course, the president has had a long-standing issue with ABC News. And because he apparently did not like this reporter's questions, he did make that link that you're talking about and brought up the licensing with regard to the FCC and networks, which are typically completely separated and obviously meant to be bipartisan without interference from politics. And so that may be viewed as a message to the chairman of the FCC, Brendan Carr, who has been outspoken about licenses before. I mean, they just went through an episode after Jimmy Kimmel made remarks and the FCC chair, Carr, suggested that perhaps the license should be reviewed. And so to your point, we have seen the president display his anger in different ways. This is not new. He has threatened this before. But it does get back to the point of how much he doesn't want to be talking about the Jeffrey Epstein files. The reason why he was triggered was because she asked, why don't you just direct the Department of Justice to release the files? Why are you waiting for Congress to vote and go through this process when you could easily call up Pam Bondi and ask her to make all of the files and communications public? And so you heard there the president once again defending himself, saying he had nothing to do with it, and putting the burden back on Democrats, who he said didn't do as much as he has done for Epstein victims, and demanding that they do more when it comes to investigating those prominent Democrats that he's been talking about, Reed, all week.
Live from CBS News headquarters in Washington, Ouija Zhang, thank you so much. So let's continue the conversation about what we just heard there in the Oval Office. Live to CBS News intelligence and national security reporter Olivia Gossis at the State Department. All right, so another headline that came out of this was, of course, questions about the Abraham Accords, and something that you heard Ouija talk about just a little bit of a difference between how the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia and the President of the United States feel about the Abraham Accords, of course, making it clear that even before the cameras rolled, they had talked about that. What were your takeaways there?
Absolutely, Reed. And we know that the Abraham Accords is sort of the biggest area that President Trump would like to see progress. He has been pushing for it on multiple fronts from the get-go and really wanted it as a deliverable out of this trip, which was unlikely also from the get-go, just given where things stand. There was momentum behind normalization of ties between Israel and Saudi Arabia before the October 7th attacks. Days before they happened, both leaders basically said they were getting closer every day. completely derailed by the war that then ensued, has been going on. And so President Trump has been trying to restart that stalled initiative for some time. Today, he tried to be goading the Crown Prince into more of it. He said he wouldn't use the word commitment, but that he wanted to see that momentum resume. I think both sides, both the Israeli side and the Saudi side, has been abundantly clear that now is not the time for the resumption of that trajectory. But the Crown Prince signaling today that he very much wants to join the Abraham Accords when the time is right, and the time, in his view, that is right is when there is a clear pathway for a two-state solution for a Palestinian state. That is the number one criterion he has always insisted on before normalization could get underway.
Of course, there are many interests there in the Middle East, the Israelis for one. President Trump said over and over and over that the Crown Prince is his friend. He talked about shaking his hand as opposed to just a simple fist bump, which we saw in the Biden years. But with that warm characterization of the relationship between Mr. Trump and the Crown Prince and the royal family there in Saudi Arabia, does that upset any other relationship with any of the other players there in the Middle East?
I think given the visibility of this relationship, the very known and public nature of President Trump's affinity for the Saudi Crown Prince, the dynamics are generally going to be undisturbed by this visit in particular. I mean, this visit is laden with symbolism, as Weija mentioned, the first visit by the Crown Prince to Washington, D.C. since the 2018 murder of Jamal Khashoggi, that remarkable exchange among the reporter who the president excoriated as a terrible person, terrible reporter, even as he was absolving effectively, verbally, the Crown Prince of at least being aware of the actions that his elite forces carried out against Jamal Khashoggi. And so his rehabilitation in President Trump's eyes is very much in effect. That act in the rearview mirror. And I think the president made clear that he considers Saudi Arabia to be an ally among the best allies of the United States, putting them on a level with Israel, saying both of them deserve top-notch military equipment for the United States, referencing, of course, there the potential sale of F-35 fighter jets to the Saudi kingdom, something that will require congressional scrutiny amid all of the intelligence and military defense secrets that it raises.
An ally whose relationship has a huge current of money. Another headline developing out of that. $600 billion investments into the United States. President Trump got the Saudi Crown Prince to say they would up that to $1 trillion investment in the United States. So many angles to talk about here. Grateful to talk to you, Olivia Gosses. Thank you so much there from the U.S. Department of State.